and something happens, like it's a thing.
Yeah, but it's the 70s, man.
Yeah, I guess it's like, oh, well, if they wander off, that's it then.
So Kolchak ends up going to this dating service that is called Max Match, the Max Match Corporation. And in there, as we see television's Captain America, Reb Brown, is one of the guys who's filling out the forms to become an Olympian, which is the special circle of people that are in this dating service that Kathy Lee Crosby is the owner of.
Yeah.
And the conversation between Reb Brown and the other guy, like, you could hear that conversation at any gym in 2020. You know, where they're talking about, Reb Brown says something about, as long as she's probiotic. And I'm like,
yeah.
Like, the terminology has changed so little. and it's, it's amazing. Like that people have been buying into the idea of superfoods and, this, that, and the other thing. And, just the woo pseudoscience that's involved in the diet industry and the workout industry. And it's no more plainly shown in this episode. I don't know. So Kolchak starts an interview with Kathy Lee Crosby to try and, get his name taken down into this matchmaking company. And she basically, she says to him at one point, well, you're very confident in the way you dress, basically being like, you're so much of an individual. You're not afraid to dress like a hobo, Mr. Kolchak.
Yes.
I mean, it is brutally funny, that scene.
Oh, yeah. And throughout this episode, there's at least like two, I think, different little scenes where Kolchak's back at the office and like Tony just barges in and he's just like, I don't want you working on this case. I want you doing the fluff piece for tomorrow. You got to get me the fluff piece. It's so good. and then like the whole bit where, Kolchak's like, I wrote it already. Don't worry about it. I'll send it to you tomorrow. And he's like, tomorrow? You wrote it today? Like, why can't you send it to me today? And Kolchak's just like, it's just not how I operate. I do it all at once in the morning.
We'll spitball ideas.
Yeah, we'll spitball ideas. Spitball ideas. That's what you do at the beginning, not the end. It's so good.
Oh, it's excellent. And speaking of another great fucking character moment, when we get to see Telly Savalas' brother, who plays Kaz in this episode, and of course was known as Stavros on Kojak. Not Kolchak. We were talking about Kojak, but Kolchak. He was on Kojak. George Savalas, and he is so great. He basically gives Kolchak the idea of how to take on Helen of Troy and how to, break the spell, because at one point the pinky ring that she gives to people to mark them as a sacrifice to the gods, and he can't remove it. And so he's trying to, and just the whole interaction between him, Kolchak, and the drunken guy from the convention, who is just brilliant, Theresa, as a bartender, I mean, how many times have you had that guy in front of you?
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
2 episodes in a row, we're talking about awful customers that Theresa and I have had to deal with.
And all the same customers.
Yeah, but, sometimes, like, you just put some mayonnaise on your hand to get that,
yeah, and that whole
ring off.
That whole shtick is just, that's what you don't have stuff like that really anymore in a lot of, television. You don't have just these little kooky bits that make the show just fun. I guess Supernatural does stuff like that every once in a while, but it's
I definitely see some little kookiness in Supernatural, but it's definitely, you can't compare it to like the older generation, like sitcom shows and, Kolchak. Like, it's just different.
Yeah, it's just not. Let's face it. Long form storytelling on television is really, so much better than it was. It didn't really exist, other than like shows that were miniseries and stuff. But you didn't have long form story arcs. Really the first show that did that's like Babylon 5, and that's, that's the 90s. All right. So anyway, Kolchak figures out that if he destroys the temple, or he thinks if he destroys the temple of Hecate, it will break the spell and he will be able to remove the ring.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good, that scene. And then like Kolchak runs off and he's like, "Whoa, I didn't say it was definitely going to work." Like, I think it'll work. Like, what do you do? Like,
and I love Kaz and how he's just so nonchalant about all this stuff, and Kolchak takes off and leaves him in the office with Tony.
Yep.
And Tony's
that scene ends with Tony like talking to him and then just going like, "Wait, who are you?"
It's fucking great. So Kolchak goes and he breaks into Max Match, the offices, and he finds Helen of Troy's temple where she's got the statuary of the gods and so on and so forth, and starts knocking shit over, and Kathy Lee Crosby comes walking out and is just kind of like, "Oh, hey, you're destroying a lot of really expensive stuff." Yeah, and Kolchak's, like, "Well, now I've, destroyed your temple. The gods will be angry with you," so on and so forth. And she's like, "Nah, that's not how it works." And then Kolchak realizes, well, all of her sacrifices are supposed to be perfect. They're not supposed to have any scars or, be missing, anything like an eye, for instance. As it turns out, the original jogger had a glass eye that he didn't report on his, on his sheet when he applied to become an Olympian at Max Match. And so the gods are angry. There starts this storm, this swirling, and of course, Kathy Lee Crosby is caught up in it, and and there's a big flash of light and lightning and so on and so forth. And of course,
and she screams like the best of them.
Oh yeah, she's really good.
Yeah.
And then of course, she is destroyed, and Kolchak ends up, talking about it into his tape recorder. Once again, another story that he'll never be able to publish.
Yeah, and he's like leaning on her as a like she's a statue now, and he's just kind of like hanging out with her as he's like talking into the recorder.
Yeah, she gets turned to stone.
I loved that. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. It's it's a great show. It's available. All of the episodes are available. I think there's 20 of them or 22 of them are available on the NBC app. So if you want to check out one of the great 1970s horror TV shows that, as we said, is directly responsible for the creation of the X-Files and Supernatural and countless other things in the horror genre. All right, so that was Literate Revisit. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back with suggestions from myself and from Theresa and Joe as to some kind of content that you can enjoy with our segment that we call What's on Your Shelf?
Nerds.
Welcome back to the Literate Nerds. Once again, my guests for this evening are Theresa Grey and Joe Corallo. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. This is a segment that we call What's on Your Shelf, where we give the audience a suggestion of either a film or television show, a book that we're reading, an album that we're enjoying, comic book, so on and so forth. So this evening, Joe, why don't you start us off? Tell us what you're enjoying right now.
There's a few things I'm enjoying right now. For anyone who's been looking for a good run of Wonder Woman, what's going on right now that Marika Tamaki's writing has been excellent. It feels like a run, like that's going somewhere, like that there's like a plan and she'll be on it for a while. It's an interesting story. I don't want to give too much away, but mostly the premise right now is Wonder Woman has struck up this like uneasy alliance with Maxwell Lord to deal with a bigger problem. And it's really been intriguing. So anyone who's been interested in Wonder Woman and maybe hasn't really dived in, or anyone who maybe they read like the George Perez stuff and they've kind of just tuned in and out, this is a good time to tune in. It's not that far into the run. I think it's maybe like 5 or 6 issues in right now, so it's easy to catch up on. I'd highly recommend that. And then also the 3 Jokers just wrapped up last week. It's only 3 issues. They're oversized issues, but that's what was it? That is Jeff Johns, and I think Jason Fabok's the artist on it. The art's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous, consistent book that's basically, it feels like it's out of continuity, but it's the story of the Joker trying to recruit sort of other Jokers, and how Batman, Jason Todd, and Barbara Gordon are handling the situation. And it's again, it's really interesting. It feels like they're trying to go for another sort of like classic kind of Batman story, and I'm not sure it hits the same sort of high marks as some of the like standalone 80s Batman stories, but it's by Jeff Johns, who knows DC like the back of his hand, and it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that you suggested that. I've of course kind of been avoiding the Joker as of late. I just the character's gotten so inundated, and now he's now he represents abusive edgelord boyfriends as opposed to being this agent of chaos.
With this situation, like, this is a story that's sort of been in the works for a while. It's not a Harley Quinn story. It's not about that relationship. It's strictly sort of like the Joker kind of dealing with Batman. So it doesn't really go into that toxic boyfriend area. It's different than sort of what's been going on with like the main book with Punchline and Harley and that whole dynamic. So like if you want something with like the Joker that feels a little more like a classic Joker story, this would be sort of the way to go. They definitely use way too much Joker now. But in terms of like a story that's easy to consume, there's only 3 issues. They're going to collect it soon. And if you want to dive into like a Batman thing, but don't really want to like commit to the continuity of jumping in on a run and want like a smaller commitment, this isn't a bad call.
Yeah, I wanted to go back and read the Tom King Batman stuff because I have DC Universe. Yeah. And I didn't realize he's been writing that book for like 50 issues.
Yeah, he didn't leave till I think he hit 85, I think was his last issue.
Damn.
Yeah, so